Hey everybody, it's Mike from the Mike Wagner Show, powered by SoundCloud Studios, brought to you by official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Mia Molson's The Missing, available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Coming soon, Missing 2, Double Expense, Double the Fun. Check it out on Amazon. Also brought to you by Sweet Psalmist by Serena Wagner, based on the life of David, including 30 exquisite paintings and King David songs. Amazon.com, keyword Sweet Psalmist Serena Wagner, and check out the Mike Wagner Show, MikeWagnerShow.com, 40 podcast platforms, 100 countries worldwide as well. We're here, amazing gentleman who's an author, 50 years of professional business experience as fund development consultant for many Christian nonprofit organizations. He's a 1960s graduate of University of Colorado, served with his wife on full-time on the staff at CRU, which is Campus Crusade for Christ, 18 years, and dedicated 13 years developing a number of accelerated growth programs and oversaw them and various fund projects, and serves as vice president of stewardship strategies and management and development association, and has a new book, a practical faith-based book that simply ties in biblical principles and practical applications for festive stewardship. The book is called Intentional Living and Giving. Live, ladies and gentlemen, at Plus Studios, somewhere in beautiful Colorado, the amazing author, 50 years of professional business experience, the multi-talented Larry O'Neill. Larry, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining us today.
Well, good afternoon or evening yourself, my friend Mike. It's a long ways between where I am and you are, but I'm just getting halfway through my day and you're about ready to close it out.
Well, that's okay. It's a magic of being online 24/7, 365. It feels like we're neighbors and starting all over, which is a great thing. And we'd be happy to talk about what you do in beautiful Colorado. You're an author of 50 years professional business experience, fund development consultant for many Christian nonprofit organizations, 1966 graduate University of Colorado. You served with your wife on full-time staff at CRU, which is Campus Crusade for Christ, 18 years dedicated, 13 years in developing, overseeing accelerated growth programs, and served vice president of stewardship strategies. And you have a book called Intentional Living and Giving. Before getting all to Larry, tell us
You got it. You got it, man. You got it, Mike. Those are the highlights. Those are the up on the tops of the mountains, and I kept on walking.
There you go. There you go. Let's talk about how you first got started.
Well, I graduated from University of Colorado, and the university thought I was going to become one of those theater arts teachers, English education, all that kind of stuff. When I went to the University of Colorado, I saw myself in either Broadway or Hollywood. I was hooked on theater, and I spent at least 6 years of my life just getting into every aspect of the theater arts. And then one day I was at the University of Colorado, and I started to realize that every one of my peers in theater were acting a role 24/7. Nobody was real. They were all putting on a persona and starting to act out that persona. And I was caught up in that as well. When I got into theater, it was 2 hours of being somebody else, and then you took off that costume and you were yourself again. But the more you got into it, the more I saw that people were just trying to live a life that wasn't them a lot of the time. And I was caught up on what in the world is life? Why am I here? Where am I going? Those very typical questions. It probably came because I was a junior at the university, but it was also a life-changing experience to say, do I really want to pursue this forever? And about that time, I had a kind of a spiritual revival in my own life. And I thought, doing this forever and acting and playing out somebody else's life, I got to get out of here. So I basically changed my major, and the School of Education picked up on me and thought they were creating a speech coach and a drama coach and an English teacher, and I never taught any of it. So I got out and started working with students through the international organization called Crew Today. And I did that for almost 18, 19 years. But the story of my life started when I really discovered that I was good at taking and making something from nothing. And I found that to be true in theater. You took a script, a play story, and within 6 or 8 weeks, you were ready to produce that and perform it for 6 or 7 days. Then you would close that show down and you would start another show. But it always started with a script. It always started with characters. It always started with creativity on the stage. And I was quite good at taking and putting something from nothing to something.
Oh, so that's a good one. I like that. Hmm.
Well, I saw that starting to be something that I enjoyed more than I enjoyed being on the stage, just acting in front of the audience. I did a lot of both, but I gravitated toward the other kind of a thing. But I ended up in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, working at the University of Pennsylvania, one of the Ivy League schools. And that took me into just working with college students for a short time. But there was an opportunity where we brought a music group into my area, and I was assigned the task of taking care of this group for 30 days and touring them in New York, Pennsylvania, Delaware, New Jersey, Maryland, and Washington, D.C. And I didn't know any better, so I thought, well, if I'm having them for 30 days, I'm going to work them for 30 days. And I just about killed the group off because we were traveling every day, doing concerts every night. And it was very successful, but they were exhausted because they were not used to that pace of things. And after that summer was over, I was asked by the leaders of that group if I would start advancing them and setting up concerts for that group all the following year, 9 months of touring on the East Coast. And then I could pace them. I could help them have a day off to do laundry, live a normal life on the road, if you want to think of it that way. That experience got me into putting music groups together. They were spiritually oriented groups with a lot of popular music. And we had a rock group, we had a folk group, we had a classical group, we had a group in Europe and a group in Asia. So, there were all kinds of sounds and for different strokes for different folks, really.
Hmm.
And I thought I was going to do that for the rest of my life. I love creating from scratch, figuring out what the group should do, finding the right musicians, putting their show together and putting them on the road, and then mentoring and coaching that group throughout the year. So I was always traveling out to be with these groups that were touring because there was always challenges when you put young adults together, 5 to 7 of them in a group. And I thought I was going to be doing that. That was my career choice for 4 or 5 years and thoroughly loved it. And then I had a radical change where that job was no longer available to me. And it became almost a crisis of my faith and a crisis of life. What do I do now?
Mm.
And the vice president of the organization asked me to come and see him in his office about 90 days after I didn't have a clue where I was going. And he said, I got a problem, and I thought maybe you're the one that could help me figure it out. And he he says, come to my bathroom. Now, his office was in a converted hotel. So every office had a bathroom.
Mm.
And I walked into that bathroom, and he pulled the shower curtain back from the bathtub that was never used. And it was stacked with 29 boxes of pledge cards, totaling about a $2 million commitment that had been made 90 days before and had been just put in his bathtub.
Oh, my goodness. I've
And
never heard of that. Wow.
it was absolutely crazy. The word was, do you think you can take this and do anything to follow up these commitments? Because the commitments were made in early June. I saw the boxes for the first time in late August. And again, it was taking something from nothing. One other guy that was new to me, we knew each other for 10 minutes before the meeting. We took those boxes and took them to a spare room, and we said, what do we do with this? This is called fundraising. How do we go about making this a reality? Can we even make anything come from a pledge that's 90 days old?
Wow.
Well, that was the beginnings of my journey into learning what fundraising was. It was purely fundraising at that time, Mike. It was a fundraising, so you'd see the difference. Fundraising almost always in politics or sports or anything you do out there, and in many secular nonprofits, they would do it this way, is an exchange. In other words, yesterday in the mail, I got something from a major nonprofit in Southern California. And for me giving them money, they were wanting to give me a blanket to remember my gift. Maybe it's a t-shirt, maybe it's a hat, maybe it's a signed picture of the president of an organization. Fundraising always involves an exchange. So when you go play golf, for a charity, you're getting to play golf with maybe a pro in exchange for a $500 gift. So
Huh.
it's not about the mission, it's about what I get as a result of my gift. And the motivation is, can I intrigue you enough or manipulate you enough that you will send money and I will send you something else? Now, we were doing pretty good at our little task of fundraising. We were exchanging, and believe it or not, of that 29 boxes of pledge cards, we exceeded the amount of money that was pledged. So
wow.
it really did work out, but it was still a feeling in my heart that all I'm trying to do is entice people to do something that they may not want to do so I can get the money and entice them to give me again. My success was growing in that area, Mike, and all of a sudden I realized this is starting to work. I don't know what makes it work, but there was no book, there was no manual, there was no coaching, there was hardly anything out there in this realm of what they would call fund development or fundraising. And I was asked to go to a meeting, and the meeting was the leadership of the organization. And I was just a guy that was having a good streak of winning, but I was not leadership role. And we were into a presentation on how you go about raising $1 billion for the organization. And there was an argument going on about, if you're going to do that, you've got to begin to teach what they call lifestyle stewardship. Nobody in the room knew what they were talking about. And nobody wanted to start something new. So in this rather heated discussion, somebody said, let's assign that task to Larry and see if he can't figure that out for us. Now, later, I realized it was a ploy to get off subject, but I wrote out on a yellow pad of paper, figure out what lifestyle stewardship means and how does this fit into fundraising. And at the bottom of the page, I wrote, Larry, you've got the freedom to fail. A friend of mine had coached me. He'd always told me, Larry, if you don't have the freedom to fail, you're never going to try things. You're going to live on the conservative side, but people that make a difference are the ones that have the freedom to fail. So I wrote that down. That was the beginnings of learning. And we'll get into it a little bit later, maybe, but the book Intentional Living and Giving is really the elements that came together and radically changed what we did and probably put me on track for the next 35 years of helping Christian nonprofits raise financial resources, some schools, some colleges, some secular nonprofits, because the principles behind this job are pretty much universal. But I'm teaching people how to think differently. I would never let my team ever use the word donor, and that's a common word in the industry. A donor is somebody that gets stuck in the arm with a needle and you get a sugar cube as an exchange.
Oh, like blood donation. That's the association.
Blood donation. That's a donor. And at the end of your giving your pint of blood, they'll probably give you a sugar cube or they'll give you a cookie to re-energize your body to replace. So there's an exchange there, even in that context. So I said, we don't have donors, we have partners. And we're trying to help people become partners with us, holding hands with us about the mission of what we're about, not about what I get in exchange. And it radically changed how we did everything we did in our fund development work. And I took that little small team that was probably 6 or 8 people by then. 12 years later, we had 125 people in 7 departments working in the fund development arena. But behind it was always helping people get a hold of the concept, the vision, the heart, and encouraging their giving because they wanted to, whether they got anything in exchange or not. And it radically changed how we saw funding come in because people were no longer feeling like they were being manipulated. They were doing it because they believed in what they heard about. And whether it was helping, soup kitchens in the inner city, or it was helping teach kids to read and write in a certain part of the world, or doing other things, it was about the mission and the heart behind that vision, not about how can I just give them $15 to get me a blanket or a t-shirt type of thing. So
Hmm.
that was, I'm giving you a quick summary, but that got me into a very radical change. It was life changing for me personally because I never pursued that. I'm a preacher's kid by history. I was born and raised in Grand Junction, Colorado, right after the war, and my dad was a fledgling little church planter, and he hated talking about money because money equated to his salary and to other things. And like most pastors and preachers in any denomination, the money subject they just didn't like to get into. So
Exactly.
yeah,
Hmm.
that's what it was. It was they avoided it,
Hmm.
and
And
therefore they weren't teaching anything that was really biblical about what they were supposed to be doing.
do you think the Bible verse in there too? It says the love of money is the root of all evil. Do you think that's part of it too? And I know some people say money is the root of all evil, but in reality, the love of money is the root of all evil. Do you think that's a part that
Yes,
they
it
shy away
definitely,
from?
absolutely, Mike. It ties into the picture when your focus becomes on getting money. First of all, you're violating one of the core principles of who you are when you think that way. And the Old Testament brought into the principle of the tithe, and people talked about the tithe. The vast majority of churches across America and around the world today that talk about that are hoping to get people to give up to 10%.
Hmm.
Well, the tithe in the Old Testament wasn't 10%, it was 27%. It was
Okay.
the income tax of the children of Israel coming into the promised land in the Old Testament, and they were given a tithe to fund the Levitical priesthood, and they were going to take care of the administration of their system and widows and orphans. That's
Okay.
where the money went. And you gave two tithes a year. On a third year, you had to give a third tithe. So it averaged out about 27%, which is ironically pegged right close to our income tax today. And
Okay.
it was a means of taxation. It was the way you're going to fund our little community of Israelites. But today we've interpreted the tithe to mean 10%, and we're hoping we can get that far.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not against people using 10%, but if they think they're doing something biblical, they're way off skelter because in the Old Testament structure, that was the income tax of the day.
Hmm. And
Uh,
I remember too something about the tithing back in the day too. If you didn't have like the money per se, the gold, the silver, or whatever it is, they give like food or cattle or anything like that. Even like maybe like a couple turtle doves or something. It's like or like the harvest too, like it's wheat or whatever it is. That part was acceptable as well. I remember that.
well, Mike, that's where I got into it because I realized that stewardship, as I understood it, was about getting money for the church. That's what I thought it was. Uh, when I started to get into the subject, I realized there was basically five core principles that work off of that. One of them is King David, the great king of Israel, when he raised the money to build Solomon's temple, the first temple that was ever built in Jerusalem. David raised the money, but Solomon built the temple. And when they had raised the tens of millions of dollars that it took to build that temple, he had a prayer there and he said, everything in heaven and earth is yours, oh God, and you are in control of everything. And what David was really basically saying is all you've done is entrusted to us what's yours, and you're asking us to make a profit margin and return to you because in the book of Deuteronomy, one of the five books of the Pentateuch, God tells the people there, I don't need your money, but I do need to have you learn to keep me first in all things. And it's amazing when you are giving money and giving your life, you're realizing where it comes from.
Hmm.
So if you realize that God owns it all, and then you realize that God is also a giver, and everything you see about him, in fact, the first few chapters of the book of Genesis is giving creation and the principles of creation. And he puts this couple named Adam and Eve on the scene in a
Hmm.
garden. He didn't give them the garden and walk away. He said, I want you to take care of my stuff. I want you to steward what I entrust to you. So their role was to be a steward of all of God's possessions, and they were simply managing his affairs on his behalf.
Okay.
Now they blew it pretty badly. So the story goes
That was
downhill
that
there.
that was obvious. Sneaky Snake and the Apple. That's how it is.
Yes.
Sneaky
And
Snake
even
and the Apple.
there, and we're caught by the same thing today. If you listen to a lot of radio and TV preachers, deception's huge out there today. And it's deception, just like the sneaky snake, as you mentioned, came into sight. He just started misinterpreting and misquoting what God was saying and helping Adam and Eve perceive things differently than what God had already outlined for them. But God was a giver, and he wanted Adam and Eve to learn to be a giver. It was, let us create man in our image, and the image of God is to be a giver, not a taker.
Mm-hmm.
So the love of money is the root of all evil, because that's taking, that's not giving. That's it. That's becoming self-centered and selfish, not thinking of the needs of other people around you. A third aspect of God's principle is that God wants us to ask. He wants us to not only ask each other, he wants us to ask in what we call prayer. If we're talking about meditation and stuff like that, it's not because he doesn't know what we're thinking, but he wants us to become dependent on his direction in our life and asking. Now we can get a yes, a no, and a maybe, and wait a while.
Right.
It doesn't come because I ask, I get what I want. In fact, the worst thing for you is a lot of times to get what you think you need, because that could kill you off. I thought I was going to be into music for the rest of my life, creating music groups. And I had a radical change. God said, no, that's not what you're doing. I've got something else in store. It took me in a very different trajectory than what I was in.
Mm-hmm.
But if I realized that I need to be dependent on each other, a few weeks ago, Mike, I was speaking at a men's breakfast at a church activity, and there was probably about 35, 40 men there. And at the end of it, everybody got up and left, and they started going out the door. And two people were left in the room cleaning up the tables and the chairs and putting things away. And I thought, if they had stood up at the end and said, men, before you leave, I've got a request of you. Could you pick up things on your table, take them to the trash, and would you help us stack the chairs and the tables? If they would have asked, probably 70% of the men would have stayed another 5 minutes and done what we asked to be done. Because we did not ask in that environment, two men were doing all the work. We are created to ask each other, and we need to ask each other. It's not bad news to say, friend, could you help in this way? Or whatever the need might be. So asking's a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
A fourth key principle in that whole process of seeing what a steward is to understand what the law of the harvest. Now, if you're in a farming community, you're around people that understand the law of the harvest.
Mm-hmm.
You prepare, you turn the soil, you plant, you care, you fertilize, you're carefully watching for insects and things that would destroy the farming environment. Maybe it could be a snowstorm, it could be bad weather, it could be locusts coming in and destroying a wheat field. Whatever could happen, the farmer is managing on behalf of the owner that acreage, everything that it takes to see if a really good harvest comes in. And it's always 6 to 9 months after you plant the harvest. So the law of the harvest is to manage what you take care of. You've got to be responsible and intentional in doing what you're going to do if you're going to see a ripe harvest.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So many times, and if you don't realize that, you think, okay, I planted it, I'm going to go on vacation now. No, the farmer always goes on vacation after the harvest is in. He never goes in the middle of the prep time or during the harvest. He waits until everything is in, the calculations are done, the inventory has been stored or shipped or sold, and now the farmer can say, I can take a bit of a break before I start the process again. And then the exciting thing I really learned was that as I learned to be effective in my stewardship, God can provide more and more to me. If I had a cup of coffee in front of me here, I could fill it to the brim. And if you were watching me fill it to the brim, you'd say, Larry, don't fill it any further. It's full. Well, my coffee pot, if I kept on pouring, it would put coffee on the floor, on the table, every place. Mm-hmm. God's pretty wise. He's not going to waste his stewardship on a person that's not using it correctly. So, in a sense, God's saying, I will fill you to the brim, but until you redisperse that, what I gave to you, I'm not giving you any more. I'm not going to waste it. I want
Makes
to see
sense.
responsibility. So, as I learn to give, he's able to give me more, but I'm not giving to get. I'm giving because it's a part of God's nature to help me help others. So it's from God to people and it's people to people.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what had happened when I started seeing this come to light and we started utilizing those core foundational principles under everything we did, we were still very good at funding operations. That wasn't the question, but our attitude about how we went about do it radically changed. And so now we were engaging people because God wanted us to ask. He wanted us to be givers ourselves. He wanted us to be generous. He wanted us to take our time and do it right. And he wanted to bless us abundantly. And that is not a crooked, deceitful way of thinking. It's a way that God made us to be. God said, you're my friend. I want to walk with you and I want to turn you into an effective giver. And so, yes, if you looked in the world today, there's probably 100 things, Mike, that the average person could give away.
Mm-hmm. And what are some
And
of
one
the
of those
things?
was money.
Right, yeah, and what are some of the things they can give away, and how do they go about? We'll find out with author Leo Nan of Intentional Living and Giving. But first, listen to the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at SonicWebStudios.com for all your needs. Look at a professional website without breaking your budget. Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show. Get 20% off your first project. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to the next level. Also, time to give official shout out to our official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Mia Molson-Zia. If you love fast-paced mysteries, you love Missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon, a paperback and ebook. Missing is fast-paced and intriguing with an unforgettable twist. Takes place in 4 countries, 2 strangers, 1 target, where truth is illusion and those will be the first go missing. It's available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Missing by Mia Molson-Zia has gotten great reviews. An evil of endorsed by Howard celebrities, including Joanna Cassie, Forrest Riley, and many others. So grab your copy today for It Goes Missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon. Coming soon, Missing 2, Double the Suspense, Double the Fun. Check it out on Amazon. Also brought to you by Sweet Psalmist by Serena Wagner, based on the life of David, including 30 exquisite paintings and King David Psalms. The Sweet Psalmist gives new perspective David through Psalms he wrote, and it's the times of the shepherd where it started, and complicated yet turbulent relationship with King Saul. It's the story of love, betrayal, repentance, hope, and more. Check out The Sweet Psalmist by Serena Wagner on Amazon. Keyword Sweet Psalmist Serena Wagner. Also, check out the Mike Wagner Show, MikeWagnerShow.com. 40 podcast platforms, heard in 100 countries. Take us with you on any mobile device. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, TikTok. Also, listen to us on Spotify, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Apple Music, YouTube, BitChute, and more. And for t-shirts, pop sockets, throw pillows, tote bags, hoodies, Amazon.com, keywords, the Mike Wagner Show podcast. And for more great gift ideas, Amazon.com/Mia Molson-Zia. Great books, merchandise, and more. And support the Mike Wagner Show on Anchor FM, PayPal, and the MikeWagnerShow.com. We're here with amazing author with 50 years of professional business experience in fund development, Larry Onan, on the Mike Wagner Show with Intentional Living and Giving. You talk about the 100 ways of giving, and one of them is money. And what else is there from all the 99? I could probably say time.
How do you give yourself away? Well, how about the next door neighbor? Walk over and just spend 15 minutes listening to your neighbor. I'm not saying talk all the time, but your ability to listen is also giving him the ability to process. It could be other things like encouragement. It could be other kinds of help. Maybe my expertise can help. For years, I've used, I professionally use my expertise, but a lot of times I just give my time and energy away because I'm trying to help somebody else get off on the right foot. Years ago, I was teaching a group of people some of the concepts, and as we were a bunch of young adults, there was probably about 50 of us in this particular small group. It was more than a small group, but I asked them, I said, in 45 minutes, how many ways can we come up to give? And they came up with, in 45 minutes, brainstorming in small groups, 125 different ways that we
Oh,
could give.
wow. Whew.
And I said, we already know the giving money is a possibility. So we're going to put that down as money is one of those. Now, what other things can we give? And as they started to process together, they realized that we can give everything and not have to ever write a check.
Mm-hmm.
Because my expertise, my caring for somebody else, my coaching or my mentoring, my listening ear, visiting a person that's hurting and can't get out. It sounds like we repeat ourselves in some of the ways there, but there's many, many expressions, and giving is money is just one of those things. Now, it is true that when you give money, you see tangible outcomes. So there's a benefit to us when we do give money that we can see something happen with it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't really see something happen by giving 15 minutes of listening time to your neighbor, or maybe to take over just a couple of oranges, or some kind of thing that you think they may need or want. That's you don't see the tangible outcome other than maybe a thank you and a big hug, which is
Right. Yeah. Or it's like, hey, it was delicious, a compliment and all that.
Yeah, but what it does for that individual that you're helping is says somebody really cares about me. And many times loneliness drives people almost insane because they don't have anybody that they really can begin to listen to them and spare and feel like I've got a friend in life. I was on the phone just a little bit ago, and a mother was talking about a 10-year-old boy that's in the 4th grade this year. And he's new to the school. So he's been a new kid all year long. He came from another school. And it's been very difficult for him all year long to break into the tribes that already exist. Because a lot of these kids have grown up together in the same school environment. So they knew each other in kindergarten, in 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade. Now they're in 4th grade, and a new 4th grader comes on the scene. And because they're so tribal driven, they're not embracing a new kid into the tribe. His feeling is not his brilliance and his ability to do the work, but his feeling is a loneliness because nobody really wants him. Now, 4th graders are not wired to think, oh, somebody's hurting out there, I need to go help. They're just being 4th graders.
Right.
But the reality is, because he's not gaining a good friend, a relational connection, he feels sometimes isolated from the rest of the world because he can't say, there's my best friend at school.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the best friend at school is a kid that walks with him and nobody's walking with him right now. They're probably nice. They're probably not mad at him, but they have not let him into their circle of life. And we need to be in that life. So you take a person that isolates himself, that never gets out, the potential of suicide and harming themselves and depression and defeat are all over the place because they are not engaging with relationships. And we were designed for relationships. So we are designed to help each other. We're designed to look to the needs of other people. The Apostle Paul wrote to a group of people. They were living in a Roman city called Philippi. Mm-hmm. And he told them in a letter to them, he says, I want you to look out for the needs of each other. Don't think about yourselves, think about the needs of other people. That was one of the core teachings that he wanted them to understand, is you will be much better off yourself. And not only will you be better off, but you're going to be helping meet the needs of others. So the whole spirit behind this idea is I need to wake up, and I do this almost every morning. I'll wake up, and before I jump out of bed, I'll say, okay, what is in store for me today to help influence the life of somebody else? It could be a phone call. It could be, something I might say to a person checking my groceries at a grocery store. We don't know where it's going to be, but when you're open to being an influence on the lives of others, then you have the potential of starting to pick up the characteristics of what you were made for. In the book, Mike, I call this being an authorized wealth distributor.
Good
And
point.
the authorized wealth distributor is one who is sensitive to giving away God's wealth and resources into the hands of other people. And
Mhm.
I even provide them a job description and what they can do to be fulfilled as an authorized wealth distributor. But it's becoming intentional about how I live my life. I'm not living it just to survive. I'm living it so that I can help somebody else live their life. And I think a lot of times my people get caught up in crisis. Maybe they lose their job, they go through a divorce, they lose a spouse or a loved one through death. And they think, oh man, this is the world's falling apart around me. That's the first thing we think about. It could be that those are the very things that are going to take you to the next level if you allow those things to do so. I mean, a personal illustration is 10 years ago, my wife of 45 years contracted almost within a week or two of glioblastoma brain tumor.
Oh,
Now,
wow.
glioblastoma is, I had no idea they even existed until the doctor told me what she had. And I couldn't even spell it. Those are three long words: glioblastoma multiforme. I think I'm really in trouble.
I came and said, don't worry about it.
And luckily, in the industry, they call it GBM. A GBM is a glioblastoma multiforme brain tumor. Now, a GBM is a tumor, so it's encased, but the encasement also has tentacles like a jellyfish. So they call it a terminal disease because the tentacles of the tumor get way down into the folds of the brain and they cannot get all of the tumor out. They can take out the encasement, they can take out 80 to 90%. But I came home that first night when I learned that, Mike, and I thought, what in the world? I couldn't even begin to spell the three words. So I set up my computer and I thought, where am I going to look? Well, that scares me to death because I don't trust a lot in that world. But I thought Johns Hopkins University and Mayo Clinic would be two names that maybe would give me some honest truth. And I typed in Mayo Clinic out of Rochester, Minnesota, and first thing I saw and this disease, I thought, okay, it's a disease, is terminal. This is the first paragraph you're going to read about it. If you go to Mayo Clinic or Johns Hopkins, both of them did this to me. It's a terminal disease, and this is the way we've learned to treat this disease. Well, she lived another 18 months beyond that time because she had major surgery, did very well for most of her recovery time. The quality of life is what they're aiming for. They are not trying to get all the tumor out. They can't. If they do that, they're going to affect your eyesight, your ability to swallow, everything else, because your brain is highly complex.
Right.
Now, what I've said to you 10 years ago, I can't wait for my wife to die of a brain tumor so I can live on. No, I was living almost in a sense of numbness at the moment of time. I was busy being a caregiver for 18 months of my life in the middle of all that. But I would say as a result of her death and what I learned, I became a far better individual because I was learning things that I never knew I was going to learn. And I'm better today for the experience I went through. Now, does that mean I never felt lonely and grieving and sorrow? I had some of that. But, most of that became just a part of my growth period. We've all got our muscle system will go out on us if we don't use our muscles. And there's a faith muscle. If we're not using faith to trust for what is coming, then we're going to become anemic in that particular area. So muscles have got to be used. And so in life today, you've got to be testing. You've got to let the world bring sometimes chaos and say, now, how do I grow out of that chaos? Because I will be better on the backside if I just embrace the fact that this is a time of growth, not a time of chaos. Because many people are stuck. I've seen people still grieving 5 and 10 years after somebody dies because they had unresolved issues or whatever the reason was. Now, I know everybody grieves differently, but the grieving is an emotional process that we need to go through. But the question should not be, I'm going to grieve for the rest of my life. How am I going to live with the rest of my life? And how do I benefit from this turnaround from this collapse financially or from the divorce or whatever those issues are, how do I come out better rather than come out worse?
Mm-hmm.
So I am a big, I all the time I'm thinking I'm an authorized wealth distributor. How do I just learn from my daily experience today so that I can be helpful in accomplishing the mission that God put me on?
Mm-hmm. And I
So
think that,
that's
and I
where I'm.
think that's, and I think that's a great point as well too. Some people do start with a strong purpose, and how do they keep it up? We'll find out one minute. Author Larry Onan of Intentional Living and Giving. You listen to the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios, brought to you by official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Mia Molson's The Missing, The Sweet Psalmist by Serena Wagner, based on the life of David. Amazon.com, keyword Sweet Psalmist Serena Wagner, would be like amazing author Larry Onan of Intentional Living and Giving after this time out. We're back, amazing author of 50 years professional business experience and fund development, Larry Onan here on the Mike Wagner Show with Intentional Living and Giving. There's people that do have a strong vision of what they want to do, but then somewhere along the way, they screw up as well. What are some of the ways they can do that without screwing up and just staying on course too without messing up or doing foolish things?
Well, one of the ways people mess up is they think they can do it all by themselves. And we're spiritual beings, whether we like it or not. And so there's a spiritual tone to all of this. And that's recognizing who's really in control. Now, my life and my experience in theater came when I came to grips with the fact that I was seeing my faith as being a religious process. I was not living my faith. I was just going through the rituals of the faith. And traditions and rituals can be helpful, but when that's the way we're living, pretty soon you say, I can kiss that off and forget it. So that at the very foundation of all of this is I've got to be dependent on who made me in the first place. And it wasn't my mom and dad. I came here with a purpose. So I think there's a part of that is recognizing who we are. The second part is yielding myself over to the power that has been given to me by God himself. So I'm a big believer in trusting and depending on my spiritual heavenly father, if we're talking those terms. Some people have different words for him, but you've got to be connected with him or this life becomes pretty boring. I know I'm here because of what I was designed to be. And then I think we got to give ourselves some grace. I think sometimes we can beat ourselves up so much. We can look back to a bad experience and we're stuck on that. We don't know how to get around it. We got to learn to say, I'm going to walk away from that and I'm going to walk into a new day with a new purpose and a new direction. So if there's somebody listening today, they got feelings like that, I can't get there from here. Yeah, you can. It's a matter of your choice. It may take some work. It may take some special therapy. It may take counseling of some type. But anybody can move forward if that's a choice they make. I can also choose to not move forward and live a miserable, cantankerous life for the rest of my existence. And so I think there's some intentionality that's got to come. I chose the name of the book, Intentional Living and Giving, because I want people to realize they've got to decide they're going to do it. Intentionality is saying, I will do this. I will choose to go this direction. If I was to leave my home today and drive to Dallas, Texas, I would have to drive east. If I was going to go to Seattle, Washington, I would be going north.
Mm-hmm.
I can't get on the freeway and go to Seattle and Dallas at the same time.
Right.
I've got to decide intentionally where I'm going to go and then take the steps are necessary to get to that particular destination. So the first step along that way is I'm going to choose to start to live a life that's thriving, not a life of depression. That's a choice. And then I will start to learn how to do that. There's some learning involved in this process. So, in my personal experience, a few years ago when I wrote the book, Intentional Living and Giving, and I saw you holding it up there. I'll put it like this here, I guess is a good way to see it.
That's a great spot here. Go like this, like this. You can hold however you want it too. There you go. Or flash like this.
Well, what you've got there is this is what it looks like. But you can go into Barnes and Noble, you can go into Amazon, you can go into any of your choice places to find books and just ask for intentional living and giving, and this is what you're going to find. It was created because I was with a group of Europeans about 3 years ago, and they were talking about they didn't know where they could find content in the European continent that would help people start to live this way. And I thought, well, I know what the content is. I've been there and done that. I wrote another book in the 80s that touched on a lot of the same principles. This is for the Z generation and the younger crowd. Now, younger could be anybody that's still alive and walking. So there's no magic on that. But what I did is I took 9 chapters and I helped unpack the stewardship principles of life. And in the latter 9 chapters are, okay, now that you understand those principles, how do you practically live out the life? And so the book becomes almost a guidebook of living, because I'm going to touch on subjects that you're probably thinking of and you don't know what to deal with. But it's going to also take you down spiritual journeys, how you use failure and defeat, how you use a direction. You know, I knew I was going to be a music producer, and God took me on a left-hand turn, and I didn't have a clue where I was going to go. God was saying, I just got something else in store for you. God's got surprises out there. You know, in our life, we think that life is a straight line. And if I just live long enough, I'm going to die and I'll be where I want to be. Life is never a straight line. Even if I was to drive to Seattle, Washington, I'm going to go through hills, over valleys. I'm going to be going south when I thought I was going north, because the road is going to take me different ways. And we just got to recognize that our journey can be quite exciting as we navigate the curves. But all the time we know where we're going. So if you know where you're going, then the navigation of the curves are only things that make you stronger. So that's what I really want. You know, the byline of this particular book was discovering purpose, igniting abundance, and thriving as a steward of God's blessing. And really, I just want people to learn to thrive, because there's no reason to live in defeat.
Right, and I think that's a great point as well, too. That maybe think of the talents in the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, where one was given 10 talents and say do with this, and man's given 5 talents, and one person 1 talent, and then you had to get 10 talents. Here's what I did. Well done, good job. You go upstairs, and then the 5 talents, he goes, well, I can only do with this, but look what I've done. Hey, good job and everything. But the 1 talent, he just threw it away, and there was a big lecture. That can apply basically to like with money, stewardship, or even like trying to find where he wants your career as well, too. I've had that before. It's like, okay, I have these talents. It can be skills. It can be like, what you're going to do, and money, everything like that. And if a person doesn't know what to do with these talents, what's the best advice you can give? Even like trying to find direction in a job, money, everything. It's like, how can a person help with that?
Well, Mike, what I've done, I believe we can do a lot of analysis of ourselves. The Clifton String Finders is a tool that I came across some years ago, and it really is a very diagnostic, helpful tool that helps a person figure out what his strengths are.
And what's the name again? The Clifton.
It's called String Finder, but it's put out by the Clifton organization out of Omaha, Nebraska. But it's called String Finder. You can go on the web and find String Finder. What it's going to do by going through a simple test, it's going to help you identify your top 5 strengths, and it's going to also help you out of 50 different categories, your 5 worst things, your weaknesses. So the 5 or 10 tops, you want to focus on your strengths. I do not believe a person's got to focus on all their weaknesses in life. I need to know what they are. For instance, in my life, if you said, Larry, help me with an accounting problem, I'll guarantee you're talking to the wrong person. Math is not my thing. Analytics is not my thing in that way. Now, I'm good at a lot of other things, but I'm good at maximizing things. I'm good at planning things. I'm good at being accountable to make things happen. I'm good at taking something from nothing and turning it into something. I know it takes people and connectedness to do all of that. I need to focus on all of those things that make me strong. And then I need to let somebody else, I need to hire people that are good in my weakness to help me in their strengths. There are good people that love numbers. Boy,
Uh-huh.
I want those people helping me because that's not my strength. Now, here's the thing about those. We can be trained and equipped to even do weaknesses. But you know what's going to happen when you do weakness? At the end of the day, you're going to be exhausted.
I bet. Mm-hmm.
You're going to be just tired out because you're working in something that you were not created to be. Now, I still got to do my finances. I've still got to handle money. I've still got to make certain kinds of decisions I call it getting deep into the weeds of life. When I do those kind of things, I enjoy some of them, but I'm not good at those things like I am my 5 or 6 strengths. So in my stewardship, as a person that God has created, as an authorized wealth distributor, I need to be using my strengths to help advance what I'm doing, not looking for the weaknesses. But if you don't know that, you can wander around trying to do your weakness and turn it into a strength. I've heard people say, well, you got to find a weakness and just work on it for a while. Well, I guess you got to
Makes
work on it
sense.
for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But we're crazy to do that. Everybody, Mike, your giftedness in front of a microphone is not what I would do in life. I enjoy this part of it, but I'm not going to be doing what you did, and you're not going to do what I did. Between the two of us, we can help a lot of people because we've got skills and abilities to help them. And so enjoy doing what your strength is and helping people through that strength.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want people to say, okay, I've been stuck in the mud for a long time. I don't know where I'm going. Many people probably feel like they've been in a carnival bumper car ride where you go around in circles for about 6 or 7 minutes, just being thrown all over the place. Life is not a bumper car experience. Life is full of purpose and direction and meaning. And once we get our handle on that map, we can thrive. Mm-hmm. If we don't do that, we're going to be waiting for the electricity to come on so we can be bumped around some more in the bumper cars. And that is not what life is all about. It's not a win, lose, win, lose, win, lose. Oh, why am I here? Where am I going? If we're thinking negatively, we're going to end up looking to potential suicide. Mental health issues are going to become predominant. Many of our issues in life is because we are confused about what our purpose is. And if we can just get back to that, I believe there's a strong component of faith in it. I believe it's a strong component of me being intentional. I can sit around saying, okay, God, I should go do X, but I'm going to sit in my chair until you get me there. Well, 24 hours later, I'll still be sitting in my chair. Because
right.
I never chose to get out of the chair.
Mm-hmm.
That's a choice.
And I think that's important as well, too. It's like, don't sit in our butts 24 hours a day watching Netflix. And lastly, if you have to pick a lesson from the International Living and Giving, what you've done, what would it be?
What would I do? What the lesson I would learn is just learn to give yourself away the way God created you to do in the first place. Mm-hmm. And the reason I'm encouraging intentional living and giving is I know it's just a handbook. And you can get it, I think on my website, you can get a free copy if you want to go on there and just get download a copy onto your tablet or however you watch it. Get a copy of it, but get a copy for somebody else, because you probably in your listening audience have people that says, my aunt or my friend next door or my buddy over here are stuck and they just don't seem to get out of the groove. You could be a big blessing to say, just read the first 4 or 5. If it grabs you, read the next 4 or 5. And once you get over, and this book's going to help you have plans of getting you down the road. I want to see you thrive. I don't want to see you frustrated.
Mm-hmm. And so, I think that's a great idea. Right. And what's your website again and how they get a hold of you?
2 ways. You can just get the book by any place they sell books, Intentional Living and Giving. If you want to converse and talk a dialogue a little bit, you can go to LarryOnan, at Larry at LarryOnan.com. Larry at LarryOnan.com. LarryOnan.com is just my website. I do blogs on there. You can get the book there if you want a signed copy, but many people don't care about so much the sign. They just want to get a hold of the book. So,
Mhm.
go to the nearest place that sells books and they'll get you the book. It's easy to get it that way. And if you want to converse with me personally, just go to LarryOnan.com and you'll see a way where you can connect with me. And I'm glad to interact a little bit. My job is to give myself away. So if I could be helpful to somebody, I'd be glad to converse.
And I think that's a great idea as well, too. You're an excellent resource, Larry. Very inspired. We're here with author Larry Onan of Intentional Living and Giving here on the Mike Wagner Show. Larry, just a few things. What else can we expect from you 2025 and beyond?
Well, and my age, my expectation is I'm going to probably still do a little bit of consulting with Christian nonprofits. I still serve on 4 boards. I still help churches deal with governance matters because I kind of become a coach and a mentor for that.
Mm-hmm.
I have 6 grandkids, and so I spend time with them. I've got a 23-year-old on one side and a 4th grader on the other. So I've got to learn to play all kinds of things, a couple of gals in the middle of it with some boys. But I'm just thriving, and I think at 81, I've got a good distance to go. So I'm going to keep on going. I'm going to be intentional in my living and giving.
and that's a great idea. We all should be doing that, living and giving. And who do you consider biggest influence in the career?
In my career, probably a teacher in my high school days probably got me going out of the box. And then from a spiritual point of view, the scripture, the St. Paul, continues to help me with wisdom all the time from his letters. He was a rabble rouser, pretty tough character out there, but he had a lot of good things to say. So, I don't see people in this day and age that I totally look up to, although I've got a lot of peers that I admire, but I've got to go back to get some really solid wisdom to keep on going. So, even with some of the things you were holding up there, Mike, I got to go out there and find them.
You got it. And that's a great thing. And you know how to do that, Larry. And what's the best advice you can give to anybody at this point?
Keep on living and keep on giving.
And I think that's well said, too. We're here with the amazing author, Larry Onan of Intentional Living and Giving here on the Mike Wagner Show. Larry, very, very big thank you for your time. You've been absolutely amazing. Learned a lot. Looking forward to him soon. Keep us up to date. Keep in touch. Laugh at you back. And what's your website? How do people contact you? Where can people purchase or check out your book?
Larry Onan at Larry Onan, or Larry at LarryOnan.com. That's all there is to it.
And we will check that out. Once again, Larry, very big thank you for your time. You've been absolutely fantastic. Looking forward to having soon. Keep us up to date. Keep in touch. Laugh at you back. We wish all best. And Larry, you definitely have a great future ahead of you.
Thank you very much. Blessing to be with you, Mike.